the Esports World Cup account tweeted this out. Osaka, choose your fighter and prepare for an ultimate showdown. Street Fighter 6 joins the Esports World Cup. Which competitor do you think will bring the heat this summer in Riyadh? Riyadh is it the capital? I think it's the capital. Man, I sound like an idiot now. Riyadh is a major metropolitan city in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and it is where they're trying to host all of these new esports things. That's what they've been going to. They also sent out this poster announcing that Street Fighter 6 is joining the Esports World Cup. And man, this is complicated and difficult. First of all, Jabali is the person working behind the scenes to get this stuff going. He works for ESL. ESL is owned by Savvy, which is the Saudi Arabia fund. It's the fund by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to, try to get esports and video games and other tech things into the Saudi Arabian world, because the dried up dinosaurs, or not the dried up dinosaur, but the liquid dinosaurs that are over there is running out. So they're looking for the next big thing, and it looks like they're going for esports. This is a great opportunity for the FGC because it probably means hella money. It probably means a really, really cool experience for the players who get to go and all this other stuff. This is terrible for literally everything else because the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is controversial at best, I think, is like the nicest thing I can say about it. There's such a huge rap sheet of human rights violations and things that are just so incredibly worrisome that are from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that it makes it so hard. It makes it so hard to support this, right? And at the end of the day, this is not about the people who are running it. This is not about the people who are participating in it. It is about the government that is funding it, right? The US is not much better. I will say that right off the bat. The U.S., not much better. U.S. also sucks. Also, ridiculously large rap sheet for human rights violations and just bullshittery in general. But the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia worries me. And it worries me because of the lack of support for LGBTQ communities. The lack of... Actually, you know what? We'll just call it what it is. The lack of freedoms for the LGBTQ plus community. The lack of freedoms for women and other minorities. It's rough out there. So I went into the Amnesty International webpage. The Amnesty International is a news source that they basically compile all of the shit that's wrong with places like Riyadh, or like Saudi Arabia rather. And here are a couple of highlights from their report on Saudi Arabia from 2022 to 2023. Number 1. In the single largest mass execution in recent decades, 81 men, citizens, and foreign nationals were executed on the 12th of March. This is between 2022 and 2023. According to the Ministry of Interior, those executed were convicted of a range of offenses, including terrorism-related crimes, murder, armed robbery, and arms smuggling. Some of those executed were also convicted of disrupting the social fabric and national cohesion and participating and inciting sit-ins and protests. That's worrisome. Which described acts as the rights to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and association. Of those executed, 41 were from the Saudi Arabia Shia minority. In November, the authorities executed 20 people for drug-related crimes, the first such execution since the Saudi Human Rights Commission announced a moratorium on the use of the death penalty for drug-related crimes in January 2021. Now, you can say something like, well, they're breaking the laws from this place, so they should get punished. You're at face value, you are not wrong. However, the issue is that not only is this the death penalty for something as simple as protesting or organizing a sit-in, the judicial process that happens in Saudi Arabia has been touted as unfair, shitty, and nonsensical, right? So the fact that they have this process that is just a complete mess of BS to sentence people to death is a big problem. Next, another highlight from the Amnesty International report on Saudi Arabia from 2022 to 2023. The Specialized Criminal Court, the SCC, convicted and sentenced at least 15 individuals, both citizens and foreign nationals, to between 15 and 45 years in prison after grossly unfair trials for their peaceful expression or association, including peaceful online speech on Twitter. The FGC sentenced at least 2 women's rights activists to unprecedentedly lengthy prison sentences. So if you think there should be equality for women, you are going to spend 15 to 45 years in prison in Saudi Arabia. That's a big problem. If you wrote a tweet saying, man, I hate X, Y, and Z, you're going to spend 45 years in prison in Saudi Arabia. That is absolutely ridiculous, right? And man, it really kind of puts into perspective, like in the US, we have this thing called freedom of speech where I can say, fuck the US government, and there's not an FBI, like I'm not going to prison, right? That stuff, it's easy to kind of take that stuff for granted until you see something like this, which is extremely worrisome. And this is the government that wants to make Riyadh the esports capital of the world, right? This is where our paychecks are coming from. Last but not least, this is the last thing I wanted to highlight from that same report from Amnesty International between 2022 and 2023. And this one is very clear-cut, in my opinion. In March, the Council of Ministers passed a new personal status law, which came into effect in June. The new law, which was not previously codified, enables discrimination against women, including through male guardianship. Only men can be legal guardians under this law, and women must have a male guardian's permission to marry and are then obliged to obey their husband. Moreover, the law does not give women and men equal rights over matters relating to their children in the event of separation. While the mother is automatically granted custody, the father is designated as the child's legal guardian without consideration of the best interest of the child. On top of this, and this is the most effed up part, I don't know why I censored myself just for that part, but the most screwed up part of this entire thing is women do not have a say over who is their guardian. So if you're a woman, you're just kind of fucked. That's essentially the quick and dirty of it in Saudi Arabia. If you're out without your legal guardian, you are either going to jail or going to be put to death or some crazy shit like that. That's bad. That's really bad. And, you know, I would like to believe that the FGC is one of the, if not the most inclusive esports, right? We tout that, you know, we're welcoming to LGBTQ people. We tout that we're a true meritocracy, right? Where if you play well, you're going to go far. So seeing a country that has this stuff in its, not even its like history, this is last year, right? This is not even like a decade ago, not even 2 years ago. This is last year. And you can see propaganda of them saying things like, oh, no, we're progressive. We're getting better. None of that stuff. That stuff is ancient history. This is last year. And I'm not even getting into like the real fucked up political stuff, like the assassination of the journalist. Oh, my God. What is that journalist name? I am actually pulling it up. Khashoggi. Yeah, Jamal Khashoggi, who was assassinated. And he covered major stories, including Soviet Union invasions of Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, and Osama bin Laden. He is a very storied journalist, and he fled Saudi Arabia and then was murdered by a Saudi-sanctioned murderer. So not even getting into that kind of fucked up stuff. Just getting into the human rights violations of it all. It's very difficult. It's extremely difficult to see something announced in Saudi Arabia and go, oh, hey, that's awesome. Not even to mention, like, as of, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, a person who just happens to, you know, have grown up Jewish, would not have been allowed in the country until like I think it was either last year or 2 years ago, where they were like, okay, we'll let Jewish people in here. And, you know, that's its whole freaking thing, right? Now, you can say something like, but Ilan, the U.S. is also incredibly terrible. They are, you know, there's no equality based on, there's inequality based on racial and gender identities. The U.S. is not perfect. You're right. I'm not saying the U.S. is good. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia both are terrible. And my big issue with Saudi Arabia is, with this event in particular, is that it is funded by the government of Saudi Arabia, who does this kind of stuff, right? Whereas in the US, these are private companies who aren't necessarily involved with government and with these decisions. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to see something like this and be excited for it. I would like to think that the people who are excited for this and are excited to get involved just don't know any better. But I don't know. I don't know. And I don't want to have the cynical view of, people having an issue until the check clears, right? Because for me personally, it's like, get that bag, right? Sometimes you have to eat shit to pay rent. But is going down this path worthwhile? I don't think so. I think this is something we need to stay away from. But the fact that, one of the bigger companies in esports right now, ESL, is under the Savvy funding and is kind of under their thumb, and this is what they're trying to do, sucks. It sucks. Anywhere else would have been great. Saudi Arabia. The thing that makes me really upset is that this is all so complicated. And I'm sure, and look, I'm not like a political commentator, right? I don't know the ins and outs of politics in the US or in Saudi Arabia or anything else. But seeing what is presented, like what I have shown you with the human rights violations, with the executions, with the lack of freedom of speech, all of this, it makes it so hard to see an upside to this, right? But yeah, those are, I know I just kind of rambled for a little while, but like those are my thoughts on the thing. I don't think there's anything else I can say at this point. It sucks. I don't want this to be what is happening, but it is what is happening. There is a very cynical part of me. I will say this, and I don't mean this, well, maybe I do, I don't know. The one thing I do not want to see, and I genuinely think this may be happening behind the scenes. I have no evidence. I have no real, what's it called? Like I have no like real tangible reason for saying this, but it's just a gut feeling. There is a part of me that thinks we're going to see Evo Saudi Arabia at some point, Evo Riyadh. And that, to me, is going to be kind of like the end. There is a part of me that, like, I have this gut feeling that it's going to happen, especially because Sony announced that they are a partner in the Esports World Cup happening in Riyadh. Man, I do not want to see something like that. I don't even know what to say. Like, I just have this gut feeling that it's going to happen. And I want to be excited for the people who are working on these things because they're doing their best. They're like really trying to elevate the FGC. They're like trying to they're trying their damnedest to make something really good. But it's all overshadowed by things outside of the FGC that are extremely worrisome and extremely like daunting and extremely disturbing, right? So that's where I'm at. If you have any information on stuff like that and you want to get at me, feel free to either comment on here or hit me up on the YouTube, or you can even email the show, bov@bestofvshow.com. Get at me and I'll address any comments on the show next week or even on stream, because I've been on a bit of a roll. I've been streaming every day except last Sunday.